All right, as we approach the hour mark, the final topic, which I would assume most of my AoE audience would be delighted about, which is how I became, and I have this screenshot. So I was rank 3,300 in the world in StarCraft during its prime, during Wings of Liberty, when this game had multiple millions of players. And then in my North American region, I was top 1,430. To me, this is one of my greatest accomplishments because for anyone that knows how difficult RTS games are and anyone that knows how many players that played StarCraft at such a high level to get to even this level for even if it was for a day, if even if it was at this rank for a day, this is an incredible accomplishment for me. So when I was a kid, I played a decent amount of RTS games, nothing crazy. When I moved to Canada, I lived in my cousin's basements. I started playing Starcraft 1, and I started playing, I was like 8 years old. I was playing Starcraft 1 online, playing most of like the mini games in Starcraft 1. There was this little game where everyone would get a square and the units would go across the screen and you'd have to make sure there's no leaks. If there's leaks, you start losing units or whatever. And I just fell in love with the RTS genre in general. I loved it so much. I played AoE on, I made an AoE video on my other channel. I'll leave that like in the top right of this one, which talks about my love for AoE and why I think it's one of the best video games ever made. But I fell in love with the RTS genre. I was playing AoE on like Game Ranger, and AoE was fun, but mechanically it was just not good enough. Until it got to the D edition, in my opinion, AoE was not really playable. Like it was only fun for like LAN parties and when you played with friends, but like competitively, it was so sluggish. It was so outdated. The moment StarCraft 2 came out, I was like, holy shit, this was graphically amazing. The controls, the hotkeys, all that stuff. It was so well balanced and created, and I just fell in love with StarCraft. I started playing it literally, I would say 4 hours, 5 hours a day, every day. Like I was obsessed with StarCraft. I even played in a tournament for money at one point. It was like, I don't know, it was like $100 tournament. And I got to the finals and I just got absolutely crushed because although I got good at StarCraft, mechanically I was not nowhere near the level where my ranking kind of is. My macro in late game was horrendous. I was extremely good in the early game. I also knew a lot of really cheesy builds. Let's say I was dangerous in Protoss versus Protoss. I would have probably like a 75% win rate because in Protoss versus Protoss, there was one strategy at that level you can do, and if they haven't seen it or if they don't know how to react to it, you're going to win almost every time, or whatever, 75% of the time. And that carried my rankings very much. I was okay in late game Protoss versus Zerg, or I think Zerg, yeah, and my Terran versus Protoss was horrendous. I was a Protoss player, and as the game got longer and, it started requiring more micro and more macro, that's when I really slipped. My early game was amazing. My late game was abysmal. Like I could not keep up with the actual guys that were there was guys that got to this level the right way, let's say. They worked on their mechanics, whereas I kind of just figure out what's the best way to win. And winning comes at a price. You always you think, "Oh, I'm winning all these games. This is amazing." Right, but if you're sacrificing let's say the fundamentals, the pure mechanics of the game, at a certain point at the higher levels, you get exposed when you don't have those. And I wish I knew what I knew today on how to actually play these games competitively, how to actually methodically, let's say, get better at a game, how to improve, and how to worry about improving in the game as opposed to worrying about getting results. But ultimately, to try to be competitive in StarCraft is unbelievably difficult. It is statistically staggering for some random person like me from like Canada, like North America, to become a well-paid, let's say, StarCraft 2 player, streamer, content creator, what do you want to call it. And the Korean dudes that play like 8 hours a day, live in a house with other world-class players, they are so far ahead of the curve that it honestly was for the best that this is where I peaked, and I just said like, okay, this is pretty good. I need to like, I'm extremely competitive. I have a real problem with trying to put something down before I become, masterful in it. But this, for me, I was more than delighted with these results, and I was happy with what I accomplished. I think if I really wanted to put my mind to any one thing, I can succeed in it. Whether I can get to like top 1,000, top 100 level, that's a different story. But I know I can succeed in it if I really wanted to. But I was more than happy with how far I got with StarCraft.